At 68, I've lived long enough to learn a thing or two about life, but there's one choice I made that I regret more than anything: retiring early. At the time, it felt like the dream everyone chases: freedom from the daily grind, endless days to relax, and the chance to finally live life on my terms. I was 55 when I walked away from my career. My savings looked solid, and my friends and family cheered me on, saying I deserved it. But what I didn't expect was how that decision would unravel parts of my life I'd spent decades building. I know many of you might be dreaming of early retirement yourself. Maybe you're counting down the years, imagining golf courses, travel, or lazy mornings with no alarm clock. Or maybe you're advising a loved one to take the leap, thinking it's the ultimate reward for years of hard work. But before you make that choice, I want to share 6 hard truths I wish someone had told me before I turned in my office keys. Because early retirement isn't just about freedom. It changes everything in ways you can't imagine until you're living it. Stay with me until the end, because some of these lessons might catch you off guard. And if you or someone you know is thinking about retiring early, this could be the wake-up call you need before making a decision that's harder to undo than you think. Let's dive in. The first regret hit me harder than I expected: losing my sense of purpose. When I decided to retire at 55, I was thrilled at the idea of no more deadlines, no more meetings, no more rushing to beat the morning traffic. I've been a project manager for 30 years, and I told myself I was ready to trade the stress for peace. But what I didn't realize was how much my work gave my life meaning. Back when I was working, every day had a rhythm. I'd wake up knowing I had tasks to tackle, problems to solve, and people counting on me. Even on the tough days, I felt like I was contributing, building something, helping my team, making a difference no matter how small. My job wasn't just a paycheck. It was a reason to get out of bed, a thread that connected me to the world. But the day I retired, that thread snapped. The first few weeks felt like a vacation. I slept in, read books, and tackled some home projects I've been putting off. But soon, those projects ran out, and the novelty of free time wore off. I wake up, make coffee, and then nothing. No emails to answer, no meetings to prep for, no one needing my input. The days stretched out, empty and quiet. I try to fill them, gardening, watching TV, even signing up for a pottery class, but none of it felt like enough. I started to feel like I was just existing, not living. I remember one morning, about 6 months in, sitting at my kitchen table staring out the window. The neighbor's car pulled out for work. Kids were heading to school, and the world was buzzing along without me. I realized I didn't have a reason to get up anymore. No one needed me. That thought was heavier than any deadline I'd ever faced. The hardest part? Once you lose that sense of purpose, it's not easy to find it again. You can't just flip a switch and feel useful. It's like a muscle. If you don't use it, it weakens, and rebuilding it takes more effort than you expect. If you're thinking about early retirement, ask yourself, what gives your life meaning right now? Is it your work, your role in your community, or something else? Because when you walk away from that, you're not just leaving a job, you're leaving a piece of yourself behind. And let me tell you, that piece is harder to replace than you think. The second regret is one I'm almost embarrassed to admit. The financial reality of early retirement wasn't what I planned for. When I retired, I thought I had it all figured out. I'd saved diligently, had a 401k, some investments, and a spreadsheet that said I'd be fine for decades. My financial advisor gave me a thumbs up, and I felt confident I could live comfortably without a paycheck. But life has a way of throwing curveballs you don't see coming. At 55, I was healthy, my house was paid off, and my expenses seemed predictable. But within a few years, things started to change. First, there was the market dip. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to shave a chunk off my investments. Then came the unexpected costs. A new roof after a storm, medical bills for a surgery I didn't plan on, and rising prices for everything from groceries to gas. My budget, which looked airtight on paper, started feeling tighter than I'd ever imagined. The worst part wasn't even the big expenses. It was the little things adding up. When you're retired, you have more time to spend money. Lunches out with friends, trips to fill the days, hobbies to keep you busy. It all costs more than you think. And when you're not earning income, every dollar you spend feels like a countdown. I started second-guessing every purchase, wondering if I'd have enough to last me into my 80s or 90s. That freedom I dreamed of? It started feeling like a trap. I'll never forget the day I sat down to review my accounts 3 years into retirement. I ran the numbers and realized I'd already dipped deeper into my savings than I'd planned. My heart sank. I'd been so sure I was set, but now I was wondering if I'd have to cut back, or worse, go back to work. But at 58, finding a job that paid what I used to earn, that was a whole new challenge I hadn't anticipated. If you're considering early retirement, don't just trust the spreadsheets. Ask yourself, are you ready for the unexpected? Because no matter how much you plan, life doesn't follow a script, and the money you think will last forever might not stretch as far as you hope. If you're finding this helpful, please comment number 2 below to let me know you're with me. And if you haven't subscribed, hit that button and turn on the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. The third regret is one that caught me off guard. Losing touch with my social world. When I was working, my days were filled with people, colleagues, clients, even the barista at the coffee shop I hit every morning. My job wasn't just tasks. It was a web of connections that kept me grounded. I didn't realize how much those relationships shaped my life until they were gone. When I retired, I told myself I'd stay in touch. I meet coworkers for lunch, join clubs, make new friends. But the truth is, it's harder than it sounds. My old work friends were still caught up in their careers, meetings, deadlines, office drama. When we did meet up, the conversations felt different. They'd talk about projects I was no longer part of, and I'd struggle to relate. Slowly, the invites dwindled. Not because anyone stopped caring, but because life moves on, and when you're not in the same orbit, it's easy to drift. I tried to build a new social life, but it wasn't easy. The local community center had groups, but many were geared toward older retirees, and at 55, I didn't feel like I fit in. I joined a hiking club, but the connections felt surface level, nothing like the camaraderie I'd had at work. I started to notice how quiet my phone was. No texts about weekend plans, no emails catching me up on gossip. My wife was still working, so she was out most days, and I found myself spending hours alone, wondering when I'd become so invisible. One moment sticks with me. It was my birthday, about a year into retirement. I'd expected a flurry of calls or messages, like the old days when my desk would be covered in cards. But that day, the phone barely rang. A few texts came through, but it wasn't the same. I sat there, staring at a cake I'd bought for myself, and felt a pang of loneliness I hadn't expected. I wasn't just retired, I was disconnected. If you're thinking about early retirement, ask yourself, who's in your corner now, and will they still be there when your routine changes? Because the relationships you take for granted today might not survive the shift, and building new ones isn't as simple as signing up for a club. The fourth regret is something I never saw coming: how early retirement affected my mind. When I was working, my brain was always on, solving problems, planning projects, juggling priorities. I prided myself on being sharp, quick with solutions, someone people turned to when things got tricky. I thought retirement would give my mind a break, a chance to relax. Instead, it started to feel like my brain was slowing down. Without the daily challenges of work, I noticed little things slipping. I forget where I parked my car, struggle to recall names, or lose track of what I was saying mid-sentence. At first, I laughed it off. Aging, right? But it wasn't just age. My days lacked the mental workouts I'd gotten from work. No more analyzing data, no more debating strategies, no more learning. New systems. I tried crosswords and Sudoku, but they weren't the same. My mind craved real problems, not puzzles for the sake of passing time. I started to feel dull. Conversations with my wife, who was still working, highlighted it. She'd come home talking about her day, full of energy, while I'd struggle to match her. I'd tell the same stories, repeat the same complaints about the neighbor's dog. One night, she gently said, "You used to have so much to say." That stung because I felt it too. I wasn't the sharp, curious person I'd been. My world had gotten smaller, and my mind was shrinking with it. I met another early retiree, Tom, at a community event. He'd been a lawyer, retired at 57, and told me he felt the same. "It's like my brain's on standby," he said. He'd started volunteering to keep sharp, but even that wasn't enough. We both realized the same thing. When you stop challenging your mind, it doesn't just rest, it starts to fade. If you're considering early retirement, ask yourself, how will you keep your mind engaged when the structure of work is gone? Because your brain needs purpose as much as your heart needs connection, and without it, you might lose more than just your edge. If you're still here, drop number 4 in the comments to let me know this is resonating. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for more insights like this. The 5th regret is one that hit close to home. How early retirement strained the relationships that mattered most. I thought retiring would give me more time with my wife, my kids, my friends, time to strengthen those bonds. But instead, it threw everything off balance in ways I didn't expect. My wife, Sarah, was still working when I retired. I figured I'd take on more at home, cooking, errands, maybe surprise her with a cleaner house. But what I didn't anticipate was how our different rhythms would clash. I was home all day, eager to talk when she got back, but she'd be drained from work, needing quiet. I want to plan trips or projects, but her schedule didn't match mine. I started to feel like a roommate she had to tiptoe around. One evening, she snapped, "I can't be your entertainment committee." It wasn't mean, just honest, but it hurt. I realized I'd been leaning on her to fill the gaps in my days, and it was wearing her down. With my kids, it was different, but just as tough. They were grown, with their own lives, and I thought retirement would mean more family time. But my calls and texts went unanswered more than I'd like. When we did get together, I felt like I was trying too hard, planning big dinners, pushing for closeness that didn't come naturally anymore. They loved me. I knew that. But I wasn't part of their daily world anymore. I'd become the dad who had too much time and not enough to talk about. Even friendships shifted. My golf buddies were still working, so our games became rare. When we did meet, I fell out of step. No new work stories to share, no common ground to laugh over. I try to stay close, but it's hard when you're living in different realities. Slowly, I became the guy who was always free, and that didn't feel as good as it sounds. If you're thinking about early retirement, ask yourself, how will this change the dynamics with the people you love? Because more time doesn't always mean better relationships. It can mean new tensions you're not prepared for. The final regret is the hardest to swallow. Once I retired early, going back wasn't as simple as I thought. When I left my job, I told myself I could always pick up consulting or part-time work if I got bored. I was 55, experienced, with a solid resume. How hard could it be? But the reality was a wake-up call. A couple of years in, when the emptiness and financial strain started to hit, I decided to look for work. I polished my resume, reached out to contacts, applied for roles I would have aced in my prime. But the responses were lukewarm at best. Companies wanted younger candidates, people fresh in the game, not someone who'd been out of the loop. My skills, once cutting-edge, felt dated. The industry had moved on. New software, new jargon, new priorities. I felt like a dinosaur. I did land a few interviews, but they were humbling. One hiring manager, barely 30, asked why I wanted to start over at my age. Another offered a part-time gig at half my old salary. I wasn't just fighting the job market. I was fighting the gap I'd created by stepping away. My confidence took a hit, and so did my sense of self. I defined myself by my career for so long, and now I was neither retired nor employable, just stuck. I met others like me, early retirees who tried to jump back in, only to find the doors half closed. One woman, a former HR director, told me she ended up working retail to make ends meet. "It's not what I pictured," she said, and I felt that in my bones. The longer you're out, the harder it is to get back, and the life you left behind isn't waiting for you. If you're considering early retirement, ask yourself, are you truly ready to close that chapter for good? Because once you step away, the path back is steeper than you think, and the world you knew might not have a place for you anymore. If this hit home, comment number 6 below and let me know you're still with me. Subscribe and hit the bell to keep these lessons coming. Looking back, I don't regret wanting a fuller life, but I do regret believing early retirement was the only way to get it. I walked away expecting freedom, adventure, and endless possibilities. Instead, I found a life that felt smaller, less purpose, fewer connections, and more worries than I'd ever had on my desk. Does that mean early retirement is a mistake for everyone? Not at all. Some people thrive on it, but only if they're prepared for what it really means. If I could do it over, I'd have waited. I'd have explored part-time work, taken longer vacations to test the waters, or found ways to cut back without cutting out. I have asked harder questions about what I was giving up, my role, my community, my sense of self. And if you're facing this choice, I hope you'll do the same. Don't just chase the dream of freedom. Look at the life you have now and ask if it's worth leaving behind. Because the days you're living today, with their challenges and joys, might be more precious than you realize. Thank you for staying with me. I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and share one lesson that stuck with you today. If this resonated, like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support keeps these stories alive, and I'll see you in the next one.